You're watching Pyro Media Network.
What is going on? We're back with another episode of Kwame Speaks, and I want to get into some real crazy stuff that's been going on. We've been talking about it for the past couple of months, but I wanted to bring in some experts in the field of academia to kind of discuss what this actually means. But before we do, make sure you hit that like button, share, and subscribe because it does help the algorithm, and it does let people know where they can go to find infotainment. That's right, information with a little bit of entertainment, y'all. All right, y'all. Before we get into some things, as you guys know, this administration has been attacking the Department of Education and his goals in bringing a CEO wrestler or the CEO of a wrestling organization to be the head of the Department of Education, which was wild. And his allegations, or even not his allegations, his intentions on dismantling the Department of Education and what that actually means to our students, to the future of our educational reforms that we were trying to make in previous administrations, like the Obama administration, as well as even some of the strides that were trying to be made with the Biden administration. But before we get into all of that, for those who may not know, I want you to take a look at this video so you can get some context of what's happening.
Stake for local school divisions after the latest efforts by the Trump administration to erase diversity, equity, and inclusion.
The Department of Education is reminding local school divisions federal funding could be lost if they fail to stop DEI practices. Alex Littlehales breaks down the letter and where that impact may be felt.
State and local dollars still make up a majority of the funding for our local school divisions, but federal dollars can still make up tens of millions of dollars in financial support, too. But the new directive from the just reduced U.S. Department of Education may make that federal funding now conditional.
So I think that we can look for responses from across the Commonwealth to be politically divisive.
Education chair of the Virginia NAACP, Dr. James Fetterman, believes schools will be split in their responses to the most recent U.S. Department of Education order. A Thursday letter reminding educators the, quote, use of certain DEI practices could lead to the elimination of federal funding for those schools.
And I say it's a scare tactic because the federal government does not have any involvement in the outline or the framework of public education state by state.
Portsmouth Public Schools, for example, says it is, quote, awaiting further guidance from the Virginia Department of Education, but that it receives roughly $25 million annually in federal dollars. Nationally, roughly 13% of school funding comes from federal dollars that for the moment may be conditional on whether divisions fall in line with eliminating DEI. I'm Alex Littlehales for 13 News Now.
2 weeks ago to the day, the Department of Education cut its workforce by half, with those affected federal workers now on administrative leave.
So with all of that being said, with everything that's been happening, I wanted to bring on experts in this field and people who have a passion for academia. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you guys Dr. Phoenicia Mwepo and Brittany Hawkins.
Hi.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you guys.
Hello.
Yes. So Dr. Mwepo, if you can tell us a little bit about who you are and just briefly let us know your background, and Brittany, right after, please do as well.
Hi, everybody. Hi, audience. I'm Dr. Phoenicia Mwepo, and I've been in education for about 30 years, just in different capacities. So I'm just an advocate for education, and just want to make sure our students and families is getting the things that to be successful.
Brittany?
Hello, I am Brittany Hawkins. I am actually going on 14 years working in education. Actually, I've worked in everything from special ed to college and career counseling, and I work in program management now for some programs.
Right on, right on. And as you know, we talked a little bit about the issues that have been going on with this administration. I wanted to know like how has, and this can go for both of you. We'll start out with you, Brittany, and then we'll go over to Dr. Mwepo. How has the current administration's policies affected your everyday work experience?
On a, I guess you could say, more micro scale, it's changed the structure of how we do everything. It's changed everything from the structure of our websites to how we support students, how we talk about our support of students. On a major scale, it affects even students' admissions and their ability to succeed overall in an academic setting. And it's really disheartening seeing how much the students are the ones really affected by all this.
Right. And just to be clear for context, Brittany, you're in the collegiate level of academia, correct, at this time?
Yeah. Yes. I'm currently working at post-secondary education.
Right on. And Dr. Mwepo, what about yourself? The same question in terms of your work experience and the effects of this administration's policies.
Yeah, so I work in the public school sector, and we have seen the effects, of course, from just looking at your video and just refreshing ourselves on what the Department of Education is doing under this current administration, for as the loss of federal funding if schools across America, including colleges, don't comply with the 14, I believe it was like 14 days, the schools were given a notice to end their DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. And the majority of that funding, which comes from Title I, is from the federal government that goes to support various positions within schools that support students and other different types of programs. So now we're seeing positions are being have to either be reworded altogether eliminated, depending on if the school is trying to comply with what the federal government is trying to say, or did say that they were going to do. So that ultimately affects students. If you take the titles away, the different services that those positions offer for the students, like for example, there's positions that have like specific instructional types of programs specifically for different types of students, like our SPED, like our low income students, because Title I, the schools that have a majority of low income, underrepresented students. So it's very disheartening to see the point.
And I was going to ask you because you mentioned students, and I wanted to know like what have you seen in terms of the effects on the students themselves? And you briefly mentioned it and touched on it, but what have you seen? And then also in the collegiate area, Brittany, what have you seen as well? We'll start off with you, Dr. Mwepo.
Well, right now, especially I think for in the public sector, the deportation effects that's going on, because because the government now the administration is upending families. Mm-hmm. So parents, I know particularly we have parents to even send their to school in fear of ICE agents coming, to take away or parent away or whatever. So so that's a real concern, for our students and families not sending their students to school. So, but my school site in particular, we just try to do what we can to support our kids, to reassure the parents and students that we're there to support no matter what the situation is.
And for you, Brittany?
I think the biggest effect we've seen so far is the emotional well-being of students being affected and that uncertainty. So because all of these things are coming into play, but also we don't know what that's going to mean for the next academic year in the future. There are already some programs that have either been cut or reduced that so when you work in education, even in psychology, there's this concept of hierarchy of needs. And if a student's basic needs are not met, how can they focus on making the grade or succeeding educationally? How can they focus on being successful as a person and all? And so because for many of these students, their basic needs are now being taken away, they can't even focus on the education aspect of things, or they can't even focus on school. And on top of that, it's affecting their mental and emotional health. So I've had a lot of students come in and speak with me about just how am I going to survive and provide certain things for myself and my family. Another major thing that happens is a lot of these students, they are not only going to school for them, but so that they can eventually help their families and provide for their families that are living in impoverished conditions. And when they are still struggling with those basic needs, and then you take more away from them, it ends up destroying them, and it negatively affects their outcome to be a successful person.
Yeah, and thank you for touching on that, both of you, because I think it's important, because we're seeing, just in some of the grants that were cut, the funding that was cut, the cutbacks in terms of the workforce for the Department of Education, that has dramatically affected some of the programs that were being put for, especially for low income students. For example, like, the food programs, like some of those programs, some of those students, that's their only meal, that they're getting. They don't get food at home. And so when you have this free educational program, or excuse me, free food program that is happening for the students, we know it's not free. We know the right. It's, having conversations about, like, oh, well, nothing should be free. Okay, we get it. We got it. But the bottom line is that if we're supposed to be a country that is supposed to be progressive and it's supposed to be leading in a lot of these different issues that is going on in the world, why are we not taking care of our most precious commodity, which is our students, which is our kids, right? And so you talked about just the overall 360 view of what a student's life should be, and them focusing on food or when they're going to get the next meal or basic necessities does affect their educational process and does affect how they navigate different spaces when it comes to their student life and their growth in the careers that they want to go to, thus limiting the amount of talent that we get in the talent pool that we're getting for all of these big businesses that want to pour into those things, because now students are dropping out. Students are, you're not feeling that they can make it, because it's like, why even push to go to college if I have to struggle the entire time, only to struggle, in the economy that we're having now. So it's giving them, a lot of darkness and a lot of from what I see, anxiousness. And so my question to you guys is what do you feel parents can do, or people's villages? Because every student has some type of village. We hope and pray that every student has some type of village, because that's their way to succeed, right? It takes a village to raise any child, right? And so what do you give in terms of advice to parents, to guardians, to those who are trying to support these students that are trying to navigate through these policies?
I just want to piggyback on what Brittany was saying about the social emotional piece, because that is the thing that our parents need to know, that there's resources and tools at the schools. Like, schools have PSWs, and which are social workers on site, and various community groups that partner with the schools to supply and give different types of resources and support for mental health. Because we know stress and depression tied to all the things, food insecurity and worrying about if you're going to be deported or whatever, is linked to the school. So schools are no longer just, oh, I'm just coming here just to learn. No, schools are there now as community resources to supply and help parents and guardians navigate their basic needs, their livelihood. And then parents need to also equip our students with the skills, with life skills. We're all so focused on just academic, but what about the life skills that they need? And Brittany probably could attest to this, as she's working in the collegiate area. Some students just don't have the basic life skills, street knowledge, just to life, so because we want to focus on the whole child, not just we just have to just focus on their academics, but their whole being. And that's what we as schools in the public sector are here to do, to support all of our parents and our students in that arena. I know my school in particular, we have the parent center. You know, our parents come and receive parent trainings and workshops and partake in things on how to support their students in academics as well, but also that social emotional piece too.
Yeah, and Brittany, what are your thoughts on what Dr. Mwepo just said, and also just the follow up to the question?
I wholeheartedly agree with everything she was saying. Finding those resources is going to be important. We know a lot of the resources that were traditionally funded through federal sources are going to either be adjusted. Some may even be completely taken away. But I guess, silver lining a little bit that you can say does still currently exist, and the goal is to continue for it to exist, is there are a lot more smaller local or community organizations that are working to counter this. And so if it's even at, say, the secondary or high school level, finding the resources within your school district at your high school, if it's in my level, the collegiate level, finding the resources on that campus, or someone who knows of community resources to support you. But I think another important factor for parents, like Venetia was saying, is teaching their kids a lot of those life skills early on. One thing you do see with a lot of students coming into the collegiate environment, even before this, they don't necessarily have just those day-to-day skills, even knowing to wash clothes or things like that. And so before, there was a little bit of wiggle room to learn those things later, but more of those life skills have to be learned earlier. And I think the major factor, just as a whole, as a community, is we have to start coming together and having more conversations and sharing more knowledge bases. Sometimes what happens is we forget to talk to our neighbors or talk to our friends about their kids to see how, what I know may help one of Phoenicia's students, or something Phoenicia knows might help one of my students. So building that community and that network, so that even if that funding never comes back, we can still bridge the gap for that and find a way to support each other.
Yeah, I think we need to really stop with the gatekeeping at this point, because we're all we got at this moment. And I get we all have different agendas and different goals and different things within the sub communities of our community, but at the end of the day, we have to kind of look at the community as a whole. And that's one of the things that I was talking about in one of my other segments prior, that we're all Americans and we have to have American interests, but it doesn't feel like this administration is really focusing on the American interests because it's affecting the middle class. It's affecting everyone at this point, whether it be economically, whether it be socially, etc. It's affecting us in a negative way, and it's scary
across the board. Yeah.
Across the board, and it's scary. Now we're seeing detrimental things to our education system, which was already not even at the level with other countries and par with other countries. So how do we navigate that? Yeah, So I think we're at a point right now where we can shift to in a positive direction, where we can kind of figure out okay, well, whatever we don't have available, we can see that there's a need met, right? But I know that there's a cycle of things going on where okay, well, typically when there's a community need, an organization will be formed or pop up, or someone will get a great idea and they'll say, okay, let's start a campaign or start some type of nonprofit. But the problem with that is that there's no capital anymore from government grants. There's no spaces from to be able to fund them, and you can't just everybody doesn't have $400,000 to drop to build an organization, right? And so I think it's a catch-22 at this point, because whereas if we were talking about it several years back, people can say, okay, well, if the government takes away this particular program, we can start a privatized program, fine. And I think that that's where my confusion comes in, because it's it seemed like this administration wanted to privatize things, but then you take away the funds to privatize them. So it was I didn't understand what the rhyme or reasoning was, and then to add tariffs and all of these different things, and then to try to gut the Department of Education, and then the attack on DEI, all of these different things. It was just a whirlwind of what we thought was just distractions, but it's a dismantling of our country, and it's scary. And so my question to you guys would be, and rather quickly, because I know we've been on and I took so much of your time. I'm very appreciative of it. But my question would be, how do we, as a community, or how do you feel as a community, what are the next steps, right? What do we do to help the current situation, and not just for the students and the parents, but also the workforce in the Department of Education? You guys are the educators. You guys are the guardians of our future, right? And so how do we protect you guys? How do we protect you guys' livelihood? How do we protect our kids? All of that. We'll start with you, Brittany, and then we'll go to Dr. Mwepo.
That is a challenging question. I think part of it in regards to protecting those of us who work in the workforce, but then also the students and the family, is finding a balance. One, finding the balance between doing the work and fighting that battle, but then also finding the time and energy, which is extremely hard, for that self-care and taking care of yourself. Because if you cannot take care of yourself, you're not going to be good to do that for anyone else. And then the second part to that is finding where your purpose aligns with the work is another important thing. So for some people, that may be going out and protesting, or working with those who are working on the legal aspect of things and fighting against it. For some of us, that's showing up and doing this work in education despite what is happening. You have to find your best way to fight against it, to keep it going, and to support your community. And in the midst of all of that, find the way to also have self-care for yourself and to give yourself grace as you navigate all of it.
Well said. Dr. Mwepo.
For me, just piggybacking on what Brittany, I believe that resiliency is definitely a key factor in this, because we have to, as a community, lean on each other and push through by any means necessary that we can, to support not just those who work in public education and other academia, but also, more importantly, for these students. Because sometimes we have to, yes, we need to take care of ourselves, self-care and all of that. But ultimately, when these positions are being taken away, or DEI initiatives or whatever, the kids are the ones that are suffering. And so we need to find a way to continue to empower them and let them know their worth, that they're worthy, and affirm them, encourage them, because they see what's going on, but we, at the same time, we want to expose them to new opportunities, because there's still new opportunities out there. We're getting ready to take a group of students on a trip out of state and everything. So some of them never been on an airplane before. Some of them, this is their first time being away from their family, and a little nervous and scared, but at the same time want to go and experience this new adventure for them out of state. So we're just trying to do what we can to support one another. And yes, there's rallies, there's protesting, different things you can do as a whole, but also finding ways to make our voice heard within the policy, within the government that's making these decisions. So we need all of us to make our voices heard by any format or whatever, whether it's rallying, whether it's written communication, whether it's, just through the churches, through whoever, So that's the way that we can really get together on what the things that we need to do together as a team. Because we're all a team here. Everybody's affected.
Everyone's affected. Well said.
Yeah, if you thought that you were not affected by these changes, you're deceived, because somebody that's being affected by this. Somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. So, and it's not an opportunity for us to look down on certain groups of people or whatever the case. Maybe people are just pro private, and that's fine. But not everybody can go to a private school, even though this administration wants to privatize and have vouchers and everything. But that's also leaning towards more discriminatory practices from those types of organizations that will be able to do that, because they will only want certain kids in their schools. And so I think the message is resiliency, social emotional support, any type of support we can do to meet the needs of our community.
Yeah, well said, ladies. Thank you guys so much for joining and being a part of this. I really appreciate it. I would love to have you guys back on as things progress, and we'll see how these policies navigate throughout our education system, what happens to the Department of Education, and what the individual states do. And so we'll see how it goes. But until then, one of the things that I think is important to know is that God is still on the throne, and no matter what's going on at this point, we just got to keep our trust in Him, not the man in the office, not anybody else, no future savior that may be coming in. Where we need to put our trust in Him. So we'll see what happens. So until then, stay blessed, stay stress-free, and remember, your voice matters. Thank you guys.
Thank you for watching Pyro Media Network. For more information, please visit pyromedianetwork.com.